Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans Heritage. And on today's episode, we are going to be looking at the historic center with the Monastery of St. John the Theologian and the Cave of the Apocalypse on the island of Patmos in Greece.
Yep. Yeah, this is a very fun one. So Patmos is a very small island in a little area known as the Dodecanese, and it is a place steeped with both biblical history and Byzantine co-option of that history. Uh, it
Not the
is,
Byzantines.
yeah, it is first and foremost uh, held to be the place where St. John the theologian wrote both his gospel and the apocalypse. So if you're ever wondering why Christianity is obsessed with the ending of the world, this man in this place on this island, he is at fault for all of it. You
Naturally.
can blame him. It's wonderful. Uh, there's been a lot of periodic obsession with the island. The first time after Saint John was in the 11th century, where a monastery was established there dedicated to him, to Saint John.
That tends to happen usually when there's a person of religious importance. They tend to build a monastery or a church or something on that site.
Yeah, it was almost perfectly 1,000 years after he had written it. If they had waited another 7 years, because they built it in 1088, and he and Saint John supposedly wrote everything and got it all published out there in 95.
Wow,
So if they'd
so
7 years, if they'd waited 7 years, they'd have done it on the 1,000th anniversary of Saint John's work.
So good old boy JC dips out, and then Saint John writes his works, and then what is it? 993 years later, they build the monastery.
Yeah, they build the monastery to him. Yep. Yeah, it's it's a pretty long time, but the reason for this isn't Saint John the theologian. The reason they build the monastery. No, they build it because Alexios the First, um, he wants the Byzantine Empire to really control the Aegean Sea, and so he's looking for places where he can encourage pilgrimage and justify military buildup for the sake of protecting said pilgrims.
Mm.
And he finds that there's this lovely little island on the edge of Turkey where he can go and say, look at this holy site from one of the most holy men of early Christendom. Surely this is a very important place that we must protect at all costs from these Sultan people over here, right?
Well, gee, let's look at the time frame. 1088. There's not many important things happening at this time frame. It's not the time right around the Norman conquest. It's not the height of the medieval period or early
Yeah,
medieval at this rate.
yeah, no, it's yeah, no, it's not done any of that, and it's very telling that the description of the what's called the colonization of Patmos, where they go and build these monasteries, uh, is described as developed gradually around the fortified monastic complex. As in, this wasn't just a holy place, this was a military outpost designed to defend the holy place, which we just invented because it's always been there, because we invented it.
I mean, it makes sense, especially when you look at the justification for Alexios'
Mhm.
policy, is especially like when you colonize something, it's at the highest risk because it's far away from your center base of power. It's farthest reaches of your expression of power, your projection. So to have it fortified really makes sense because it's at the highest risk. I mean, that's
Yeah,
unfortunately colonization 101.
yeah, and it's right on the border with the Turks, who do not like the Byzantines
Oh, and this is
during
also
this
around
time
the
period.
period of the spread of Islam and the caliphates and the sultans. Yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think Islam had been around for a few centuries at this point and was pretty freaking dominant in the surrounding regions.
This was around the
So,
time it was expanding the most with the caliphates.
yeah,
That reached its peak in I think 1100, which is part of the spark
right.
of the Crusades.
Yeah, yeah, and this is shortly before the Crusades. I believe the Byzantines trying to say this is Christian territory, stay out of the ocean, and the Turks going no.
You say ocean, you say.
Yeah. Now this is a very unique structure, which is a big part of why it gets on this list. In addition to being associated with one of the most influential figures from the first century, especially in terms of writing. And that's because this is something that really had to, from the get go, combine the values of a holy monastery with the practical need of, you a bloody military fortification. Those two things usually didn't get along. The incident at Lindisfarne kind of proves that most of the time with monasteries, defense was not even an afterthought. You just didn't do it because it was a holy site. It was quote unquote wrong. And here it's very, very practical.
So this site is very interesting because it is the monastery, but it's also the town right around it that had basically got built up on the outside of the monastery, which is pretty cool. You see that happen quite often. It became a site of a pilgrimage, and yeah, it just shows a lot of how important it is to the early Christian works, and the integrity of it is honestly quite incredible. It's still actively inhabited and continues to be expanded, but is within specified boundaries and under strict control and regulations. So it is still a living property. It is still ever growing and evolving.
Yeah.
However, like much
Yeah.
of the Mediterranean, Patmos is in the center of an earthquake zone.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why I think the a lot of the things here kind of indicate that the biggest concern for preservation, or at least the biggest focus, isn't on like the monastery or the town itself, because those are living, breathing things that can be relatively here too, but on the road that goes along it. Because there's a sort of almost like holy highway from the Scala to the Cora, so like from the historic center outward, that holds the sacred cave of the Apocalypse, where St. John got up on his soapbox and preached the book of Revelation to his disciple. And it's, that cave, which is a holy natural element, that gets a lot of concern because it's a cave. If a building comes down, you have the entire building right there. You can very painstakingly, brick by brick, put it back. If that cave goes down, it's gone.
But outside of natural events, the property is protected by Archaeological Law 3028 and 2002 on the protection of antiquities and cultural heritage in general. And there's also separate ministerial decrees that were published that basically carry out protection and management, as well as coordinating with regional areas and different aspects of the Dodecanese.
Yep. And one of the key things to maintaining the authenticity and integrity of the site is the fact that since the island became a part of Greece in 1948, the Greek government has implemented protective legislation for the island and for the various monastery sites. So basically, from the inception of Greece owning this land, they have written laws to protect it. And when we say that, we mean modern Greek nation state, not the ancient historical polities of Greece, because there are too many of those to bother tracking which ones controlled this island.
But because of the efforts and things put in place, the island has managed to avoid much of the downfalls of tourism, as many other islands within the Aegean have also faced. Over
Yeah.
tourism, the impacts on the local population, on the local infrastructure. So it overall is in good condition and good position. And it's something we haven't really focused on. I mean, Greece has a lot of UNESCO World Heritage sites. However, I don't think we've really ever talked about any of them.
Yeah, no, I think we've talked about one or two, but this is definitely a very unique one. It's, you guys see like the in some of the pictures is, beautiful white traditional, Mediterranean island town, and then you've got this big imposing medieval style fortress that is the monastery, just right in the center. It's a very fun juxtaposition of the art styles.
But yeah, I think that's probably a great point for us to wrap up today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Let us know your thoughts down below, and we'll see you in the next one.